There's a specific kind of restlessness that hits certain people right before something big shifts in the world. Not anxiety exactly, not excitement either. It's something quieter, a low hum beneath everything, like standing at the edge of a cliff you can't quite see yet, but your body already knows it's there. If you've been feeling that lately, if 2025 felt like a long exhale that never quite finished, you're not imagining it. Something is coming, and it has a name. Most people don't think about time the way ancient civilizations did. We see it as a straight line. One year ends, another begins, and we slap a new number on the calendar and move on. But there are older systems, built not just on seasons, but on energy, on planetary rhythm, on patterns that repeat across generations, that understood something we've largely forgotten. That not all years are created equal. Some years arrive quietly, they do their job and leave without a trace. And then there are years that arrive like a storm front. Years that shake loose what was already unstable. Years that don't just mark time, they change it. They change the people living through them. They change what gets built, what gets torn down, and what gets remembered. 2026 is one of those years. In the Chinese lunar calendar, time doesn't move in a straight line. It moves in cycles. A 12-year cycle of animals, layered over a 5-phase cycle of elements, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, creates a 60-year rotation so precise it takes a full human lifetime to complete just once. 60 years for the same combination to return. 60 years for the same energy to re-enter the world. That combination returns in 2026, the fire horse. And if you know what that means, really know, you understand why historians go quiet when this year comes up in conversation. The horse in Chinese astrology represents raw momentum, ambition without patience, motion without permission. The horse doesn't wait to be told it's ready. The horse moves. It's the archetype of the individualist, the trailblazer, the person who burns every bridge behind them, not out of spite, but because they were never planning to go back anyway. Now, layer fire on top of that. Fire in Chinese elemental psychology isn't a soft force. It's the most volatile of the 5 elements. It amplifies, it accelerates, it takes what's already in motion and removes every break. Fire horse energy is, by every historical account, the most intense, the most disruptive, and the most transformative in the entire 60-year cycle. The last time the fire horse arrived was 1966. Sit with that for a second. 1966 was not a calm year. The world didn't just change in 1966, it cracked open. The Cultural Revolution exploded in China. The Civil Rights Movement hit its most dangerous and pivotal crescendo in the United States. The Vietnam War escalated into something the public could no longer ignore. Protests erupted across Europe. Bob Dylan had already declared the times were changing, and in 1966, they did. Artists became radicals, radicals became movements, movements rewrote laws, rewrote culture, rewrote what was considered possible. And here's what's psychologically fascinating about that. None of it happened because people planned it that way. It happened because the conditions aligned, because something in the collective human nervous system, compressed for too long, restrained for too long, finally broke through. The fire horse doesn't create revolution, it reveals the one that was already waiting. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called activation energy, the minimum threshold required to trigger a significant change in a system. For years, sometimes decades, pressure builds beneath the surface of a culture. Injustice accumulates, old frameworks stop working. People feel it individually, privately, often thinking the discomfort is personal, is theirs alone. And then one year, one concentrated period of aligned energy provides just enough activation force, and everything that was quietly building goes loud all at once. That's the fire horse pattern. Not chaos for chaos's sake,
compressed truth finally finding its release valve. Neuroscientists studying collective behavior have noted that social change rarely moves in gradual linear progressions. It moves in what researchers call punctuated equilibrium, long periods of apparent stillness followed by sudden seismic shifts. The firehorse years in history are, almost without exception, those punctuation marks. 1906, 1966, 2026. In Japan, the cultural response to the firehorse was so powerful that in 1966, the national birth rate dropped by nearly 25% in a single year because of a belief, ancient, deeply embedded, that daughters born in a firehorse year would be too fierce, too independent, too unconventional for traditional domestic life. Families made an extraordinary collective decision to simply not have children that year, rather than risk raising a firehorse daughter. Think about how much psychological weight that carries, an entire nation so afraid of one year's energy that they altered their most intimate biological choices around it. That kind of fear doesn't emerge from nothing. It emerges from historical memory, from watching what firehorse years actually produce. People born under this sign throughout history and the years themselves share a fingerprint. They are not easily governed. They do not fit neatly into existing structures. They see through inherited assumptions with almost unsettling clarity, and they either become something extraordinary or they exhaust themselves fighting the world's insistence that they become something ordinary. Here's the layer most people miss. Firehorse energy doesn't only affect people born in 2026. Research into collective psychology, the field that studies how shared cultural events alter group behavior and belief, suggests that intense astrological or calendrical periods function as what sociologist Emil Durkheim called collective effervescence. A shared state of heightened awareness where boundaries between individuals soften, where normally private beliefs surface, where people act with unusual clarity or unusual courage. In simple terms, when the world is vibrating at a particular frequency, individuals begin to resonate with it whether they intended to or not. You don't have to believe in astrology for this to matter. You just have to look at history and notice the pattern. So why does this matter right now? Why is 2026 significant in a way that deserves your attention today? Because firehorse years don't reward waiting, they reward positioning. The people who understood what 1966 was before it fully arrived were the ones who shaped it rather than being swept by it. The activists who had been building infrastructure quietly for years, the artists who already knew what they needed to say, the thinkers who had been developing new frameworks in relative obscurity. They didn't get lucky, they were ready. There's a concept in cognitive psychology called proactive interference, where old patterns of thinking actively block the formation of new ones. Firehorse years, historically, create natural disruptions in those old patterns. The old scripts lose their grip. New ways of seeing become genuinely accessible in ways they simply weren't before. The window opens wider than it usually does, and it doesn't stay open forever. The practical shift, then, is this. The time to do the internal audit is now, before 2026 arrives in full force. Not in a dramatic way, not in a life upheaval way. Simply ask yourself, what old belief about what's possible am I still operating from that no longer reflects reality? What have you quietly outgrown but haven't allowed yourself to leave behind yet? Because when the firehorse arrives, that question will answer itself. The only variable is whether the answer will surprise you or whether you'll already know it. You are not just living through an ordinary year cycle. You are standing at the rare, specific threshold of a 60-year return, an event the generation before you experienced, and the generation before them, and the one before them, stretching back further than anyone reading this will likely live to see again. The fire horse doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't move gently, but it does reward those who understand what it's doing, who stop waiting for clarity to arrive from the outside and start listening for what they already know from within. If something in this resonated deeper than you expected, there's a reason for that, and it's worth exploring what that reason is.